Hello, everyone. Here we are on the eve of me taking a real estate test, and I am so nervous. If you've ever had test anxiety, you know what I'm going through right now. It's pretty harsh. Please pray for me because the job that I would like to get depends on me getting this license. Okay, now I can take the test as many times as I need until I pass, but the timing is everything right now, okay? So there is a job I'd like to pick up, and I would like to get this license. So please pray for me. It's very important to me. Let's get going with Ezekiel 29. This is called Judgment on Pharaoh. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, on the 12th day, now remember their months are different than ours, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak to him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against you, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, you great monster lying among your streams. You say, the Nile belongs to me. I made it for myself, but I will put hooks in your jaws and make the fish of your streams stick to your scales. I'll pull you out from among your streams with all the fish sticking to your scales. I'll leave you in the desert, you and all the fish of your streams. You'll fall on the open field and not be gathered or picked up. I'll give you as food to the beasts of the field, of the earth, and the birds of the sky. Then all who live in Egypt will know that I am the Lord. You've been a staff of reed for the people of Israel. When they grasped you with their hands, you splintered and you tore open their shoulders. When they leaned on you, you broke and their backs were wrenched. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'll bring a sword against you and kill both man and beast. Egypt will become a desolate wasteland. Then they'll know that I'm the Lord. Because you said the Nile is mine, I made it. Therefore, I'm against you and against your streams, and I'll make the land of Egypt a ruin and a desolate waste from Migdol to Aswan, as far as the border of Cush. You know, there really is nothing like having somebody take credit for your work. I just recently had that happen to me, and it's very insulting, especially if you're powerless to do anything about it. It's thievery, you know, it's very difficult. The foot of neither man nor beast will pass through it. No one will live there for 40 years. I'll make the land of Egypt desolate among the devastated lands, and her cities will lie desolate 40 years among ruined cities. And I'll disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says. At the end of 40 years, I'll gather the Egyptians from the nations where they were scattered. I'll bring them back from captivity and return them to Upper Egypt, the land of their ancestry. There they will be a lowly kingdom. It will be the lowliest of kingdoms and will never again exalt itself above the other nations. I will make it so weak that it will never again rule over the nations. Sort of seems like that's what we've seen already. I mean, who thinks about Egypt? We don't think about Egypt anymore. Egypt will no longer be a source of confidence for the people of Israel, but will be a reminder of their sin in turning to her for help. Then they will know that I am the sovereign Lord. In the 27th year, in the first month, on the first day, the word of the Lord came to me. Remember, this is Ezekiel talking. Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, drove his army in a hard campaign against Tyre. Every head was rubbed bare and every shoulder made raw, yet he and his army got no reward from the campaign he led against Tyre. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm going to give Egypt to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he'll carry off its wealth. He will loot and plunder the land as pay for his army. I've given him Egypt as a reward for his efforts because he and his army did it for me, declares the sovereign Lord. On that day, I will make a horn grow for the Israelites, and I'll open your mouth among them. Then they will know that I am the Lord. All right, Ezekiel 30. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Wail and say, alas for that day. For the day is near, the day of the Lord is near, a day of clouds, a time of doom for the nations. A sword will come against Egypt, and anguish will come upon Cush. When the slain fall in Egypt, her wealth will be carried away and her foundations torn down. Cush and Libya, Lydia and all Arabia, Cub and the people of the covenant land will fall by the sword along with Egypt. This is what the Lord says. The allies of Egypt will fall and her proud strength will fail. From Migdol to Aswan, they will fall by the sword within her, declares the sovereign Lord. They will be desolate among desolate lands, and their cities will lie among ruined cities. Then they will know that I'm the Lord when I set fire to Egypt, and all her helpers are crushed. On that day, messengers will go out from me in ships to frighten Cush out of her complacency. Anguish will take hold of them on that day of Egypt's doom, for it's sure to come. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I'll put an end to the hordes of Egypt by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. He and his army, the most ruthless of nations, will be brought in to destroy the land. They'll draw their swords against Egypt and fill the land with the slain. I will dry up the waters of the Nile and sell the land to an evil nation. By the hand of foreigners, I'll lay waste the land and everything in it. The Lord, the Lord, have spoken. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will destroy the idols and put an end to the images in Memphis. Bet you didn't know Memphis was a word that came out of Egypt, did you? No longer will there be a prince in Egypt, and I'll spread fear throughout the land. I'll lay waste Upper Egypt, set fire to Zoan, and inflict punishment on Thebes. I will pour out my wrath on Pelusium, the stronghold of Egypt, and wipe out the hordes of Thebes. I will set fire to Egypt. Pelusium will writhe in agony. Thebes will be taken by storm. Thebes could be Thebes, Thebes. Memphis will be in constant distress. The young man of Heliopolis and Bubastis will fall by the sword. Gosh, who's ever heard of Bubastis? Bubastis. I wonder who that is today, if it's even around anymore. And the cities themselves will go into captivity. Dark will be the day of Tapanhes. When I break the yoke of Egypt, there her proud strength will come to an end. She'll be covered with clouds, and her villages will go into captivity. So I will inflict punishment on Egypt, and they will know that I am the Lord. In the 11th year, in the 1st month, on the 7th day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, I've broken the arm of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. It has not been bound up to be healed or put in a splint so that it may become strong enough to hold a sword. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm against Pharaoh, king of Egypt. I'll break both his arms, the good arm as well as the broken one, and make the sword fall from his hand. I will disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon and put my sword in his hand. But I will break the arms of Pharaoh, and he will groan before him like a mortally wounded man. I will strengthen the arms of the king of Babylon, but the arms of Pharaoh will fall limp. Then they'll know that I'm the Lord when I put my sword into the hand of the king of Babylon, and he brandishes it against Egypt. I'll disperse the Egyptians among the nations and scatter them through the countries. Then they'll know that I am the Lord. You know, so this shows you that the Lord uses different nations and different things as instruments of punishment, okay? The Lord can do whatever he wants, people. You know, I was also thinking about the plan of salvation, and I don't know if I told you this, I might have, but when I was being discipled, which was much like what we're doing here, I had somebody who taught me. We went through the New Testament chapter by chapter, or a few chapters at a time, and then I was given questions and I answered them. And I remember when we got, I believe, to Hebrews, I'm not sure, I remember leaping off the couch and saying to my teacher, I don't like this plan. And she was such a wonderful teacher. She just said, and I thought, boy, am I going to get in trouble now because I'm a Christian, but I'm saying I don't like the plan. And she said, well, I submit to you that God didn't feel he had to run it by you before he put it in place. And see, that's the thing. We may not like what the Lord does, but it doesn't matter. He didn't run anything by us. He knows what he's doing, and we have to trust. That's what faith is. There's no such thing as a God in a box. We can think we have him in a box, but he's not in a box. He can do whatever he wants. This is all his, all of it. Our kids are his, our money is his, our belongings are his. It's all just loaned to us temporarily because he's the one that brings good things and he's the one that creates all things. So everything we have is really, it's all his. So we don't have any rights as far as changing up the plan or saying how it'll be. It's just, this is our God and it's his plan. All right, Ezekiel 31. In the 11th year, in the 3rd month, on the 1st day, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and to his hordes. What is that piece of hair I don't like? Who can be compared with you in majesty? So this is what Ezekiel is supposed to say to Pharaoh. Who can be compared with you in majesty? Consider Assyria, once a cedar in Lebanon, with beautiful branches overshadowing the forest. It towered on high, its top above the thick foliage. The waters nourished it. Deep springs made it grow tall. Their streams flowed all around its base and sent their channels to all the trees of the field, so it towered higher than all the trees of the field. Its boughs increased, its branches grew long, spreading because of abundant waters. All the birds of the sky nested in its boughs. All the animals of the wild gave birth under its branches. All the great nations lived in its shade. It was majestic in beauty. And you know, Egypt really was. I mean, when Cleopatra was ruling it, it was a huge metropolis. It was amazing. We don't have anything on what Egypt used to be. They had boulevards and all kinds of places. I mean, Egypt was stunning, okay? It was very stunning for a long time. It was majestic in beauty with its spreading boughs, for its roots went down to abundant waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not rival it, nor could the junipers equal its boughs, B-O-U-G-H-S, boughs of a tree. Nor could the plane trees compare with its branches. The garden no tree in the garden of God could match its beauty. That's saying something. I made it beautiful with abundant branches, the envy of all the trees of Eden in the garden of God, So Egypt was the envy of all the trees in Eden, which was the garden of God. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says, because the great cedar towered over the thick foliage, and because it was proud of its height, I gave it into the hands of the ruler of the nations for him to deal with according to its wickedness. Now, who did he say was the tall cedar? He said that it was Assyria, once a cedar in Lebanon with beautiful branches overshadowing the forest. Oh, you know what? I made a mistake. I'm sorry. This is all about Assyria. This is not about Egypt. This is God talking about Assyria. And it says, Pharaoh as a felled cedar of Lebanon. That's the title of this chapter. So he's comparing the fall of Assyria to the fall that's going to happen to Pharaoh. And he's saying that Assyria, he made it so beautiful that even the garden of God, Eden, the trees in it were envious of the trees in Assyria. They couldn't match them. Okay? Well, yeah, it says the envy of all the trees in Eden. So I'm sorry, it's not Egypt. Even though Egypt was exactly as I said, it was an incredible place. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because the great cedar towered over the thick foliage, and because it was proud of its height, I gave it into the hands of the rulers of the nations for him to deal with according to its wickedness. That must be Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian. I cast it aside, and the most ruthless of foreign nations cut it down and left it. Its boughs fell on the mountains and in all the valleys. Its branches lay broken in all the ravines of the land. All the nations of the earth came out from under its shade and left it. All the birds settled on the fallen tree, and all the wild animals lived among its branches. Therefore, no other trees by the waters are ever to tower proudly on high, lifting their tops above the thick foliage. No other trees so well watered are ever to reach such a height. They are all destined for death, for the earth below, among mortals who go down to the realm of the dead. This is what the sovereign Lord says. On the day it was brought down to the realm of the dead, I covered the deep springs with mourning for it. I held back its streams, and its abundant waters were restrained. Because of it, I clothed Lebanon with gloom, and all the trees of the field withered away. I made the nations tremble at the sound of its fall when I brought it down to the realm of the dead to be with those who go down to the pit. Then all the trees of Eden, the choicest and best of Lebanon, the well-watered trees, were consoled in the earth below. Their enemy was destroyed, nothing to envy anymore. They too, like the great cedar, had gone down to the realm of the dead, to those killed by the sword, along with the armed men who lived in its shade among the nations. Which of the trees of Eden can be compared with you in splendor and majesty? Yet you too will be brought down with the trees of Eden to the earth below. You will lie among the uncircumcised with those killed by the sword. This is Pharaoh and all his hordes, declares the sovereign Lord. Okay, so that's it. We now know the fate of Assyria. Bear with me right here because I want to look up what nation is Lebanon. You know, it would probably help if I understood some of the geography here. Let's see, Lebanon is home to roughly 6 million people. It is one of the smallest countries in the world. Okay, so I'm going to ask this, since Assyria was compared to a tall cedar in Lebanon, and Lebanon was known for its cedar trees. I'm going to say, who is Assyria to Lebanon? Most of the Assyrians in Lebanon came as refugees from northern Iraq and northeast Syria. 2 of the 4 locations of the Assyrian homeland. So Iraq is the home of the homeland of the Syrians, as well as northeast Syria. There are an estimated 40,000 to 80,000 Iraqi Assyrian refugees in Lebanon. The vast majority of them are undocumented, with a large number having been deported or put in prison. It almost makes you wonder if the Lord's curse has gone on. He did say he'd bring Assyria down. And, you know, these poor people are in prison, the ones that are in Lebanon anyway. Isn't that funny how the things the Lord is saying now have repercussions in today's world? We can see it. Also, let's look and see. Let's find out what that town was. It was called like some weird name starting with a B. Let's look that up really quick before I let you go. It must have been in Ezekiel 30. Oh no, I'm looking at Babylon. Bubastis. Let's see what Bubastis is. Who is Bubastis? B-U-B-A-S-T-I-S. Bubastis, also known in Arabic as Tel Basta, or in Egyptian Perbast, was an ancient Egyptian city. Bubastis is often identified with the biblical Pi-Beseth, Hebrew Ezekiel. It was the capital of its own nome, it says, N-O-M-E, located, what is a nome? A nome was a territorial division. Okay, territorial division in ancient Egypt. So Bubastis was a capital of its own territorial region in Egypt, located along the River Nile in the Delta region of Lower Egypt, and notable as a center of worship for the feline goddess Bastet, B-A-S-T-E-T. So this must be the one that looked like the cat, the big cat goddess. And therefore the principal depository in Egypt of mummies of cats. And they've found thousands of cat mummies. Its ruins are located in the suburbs of the modern city, listen to this name, of Zagazig. Z-A-G-A-Z-I-G, so Zagazig. Strange. Bukistit. The name Bubastis in Egyptian, conventionally pronounced Perbast, but in earlier Egyptian can be reconstructed as Bukistit. It is a compound of Egyptian house and the name of the goddess Bastet. So it basically means the cat goddess's house, Bastet's house. All right, I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Please pray for me for my real estate test. It's just, you know, I don't know anything about timing. Timing is God's realm. But I would like to pass the test so that I can move into a job I really want. I love you very much. I covet your prayers. And I'll see you tomorrow. We'll pick it up at Ezekiel 32. Love you. Bye-bye.